I guess I'll pass the floor to John and introduce you and welcome him to Girdwood. He's had a great day meeting some business leaders, meeting our board at Girdwood 2020, and then tonight in our community. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I forgot to turn off my phone. I hope it doesn't ring. Well, welcome everybody. I am a baby boomer. I'm 66 years old. I'm so old I hardly know what millennial means, but I have two daughters that are millennials. I've been married for 45 years. First date was in Breckenridge, Colorado in 1969 with my then girlfriend, now wife. So I have been attached to Breckenridge kind of by the hip, gosh, for almost 50 years, 47 or 8 years. My brother and I started skiing in Breckenridge. The second year was opened in 1962. And skiing is a passion for me. Backcountry skiing is a passion for me. Climbing is a passion for me. The last time I was in Alaska, I climbed Denali in 2001 on the Upper West Rib route. That was kind of the pinnacle of my high altitude climbing career. I still climb 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado and ski them. May's a big month coming up, a little bit of June. So I still love getting outdoors. I'm a lot slower than I used to be, but I still have a lot of fun doing it. I've given this slideshow, this will be my third time. I gave it in Glenwood Springs to a bunch of mountain resort communities in September, to Chaffee County, which is where Salida and Buena Vista, Colorado are. I did that in December. So this is essentially the same topic, same conundrum, we're all in. We are living at a crossroads in paradise. I'd never been to Girdwood until today, and it's beautiful. The mountains are fabulous. It looks like the ski area is great fun. You have many of the same problems that Breckenridge has, Salida, Buena Vista, Aspen, Telluride, etc. So that's why I named this the Crossroads in Paradise. It's paradise because we get to do all that. You have a fabulous Nordic trail system here. I'm sure you've got a lot of good mountain biking. The downhill skiing is fabulous. I'm sure the fishing is great as well. I'm not a fisherman, but these are things that people do in mountain communities everywhere. It's part of the culture. This is some of Breckenridge. I saw a funny little bumper sticker in Talkeetna when I was there in 2001. Talkeetna is a climbing village with a drinking problem. Well, Breckenridge is a skiing village with a drinking problem, or a drinking village with a skiing problem. This is called the Shot Ski. It's the longest, it was 1,200 feet long, which means it's, I don't know, a ski is 6 feet long. So what's that, 200 skis bolted together, shot glasses every 3 feet, 1,200 participants, whatever. And so we're in the Guinness Book of Records. As the mayor, I tried to get involved, and they said, John, you didn't sign up. You can't, there's no spot for you. So I didn't get to do it. We all wear these goofy horns. It's called Ullrfest. Ullr is the Norse god of snow in Breckenridge. I don't know if it is anywhere else. So this usually occurs in January. It's a lot of fun, huge parade, etc. Dogs are a huge part of our community, just like they're a huge part of your community. Picking up dog poop is a huge part of our community, just like it is in your community. 4th of July is one of the busiest days of the year, weekends of the year. I'm sure it's busy here as well. Several years ago in 2010, we had a community forum where we said, what do we want Breckenridge to look like in 2030? And so this is in 2010. And right now we have 20 to 23 days of gridlock, traffic gridlock per year. That means the traffic just stops. That's how many people we have. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But in this community process, the community said in 2030, we don't want more than 25 days of gridlock. So what we're seeing now is pretty much what our community wants in the future. And back in 2010, that would have been 20 years down the road. And 4th of July is one of those gridlock times. Part of the reason we have gridlock is sometimes Breckenridge is the busiest ski resort in North America. It's usually either number 1, 2, or 3 with Vail and Whistler. So it's nuts. And it's a ski area that's half the size of Vail. So it's a crowded ski area. Still a lot of fun to ski, but it's congested. We're reaching our max in terms of developable real estate because years ago in 1996 we created this thing called the Joint Upper Blue Master Plan. We're surrounded by Forest Service just like you guys are. Most of the developable property is down in the valley floor, and in 1996 we said, well, mathematically we have 12,000 units of development left in our community. And at the time we had about 1,400 citizens. It was very small. It was a ghost town in 1955. So we decided to lop off 25% of that density. We didn't want the town to get that big. And so we did it, got buy-in from the Summit County government, the town of Breckenridge, the town of Blue River, the unincorporated parts of Summit County and our end of the county. So now we had, in 1996, 9,000 units of development, not 12,000. And now we're down to about 1,800 left 20 years later. So sometime 2022, 2023, we are going to be out of developable real estate, unlike you guys up here. But it's one of those things, you get what you wish for, and in 2023, I don't know what real estate prices are going to look like. They'll probably be very expensive, more so than they are now, but they're hideous now. I don't really sound like a Breckenridge cheerleader, do I? Anyhow, we realized in 1996 we had an affordable housing, workforce housing shortage. Wages were like this, housing prices were like this. And I'm sure you're seeing the same thing in Girdwood and probably all over Alaska. This is where public policy got involved, and we decided to do something about the workforce housing demand. In 2005, you had to make $54 an hour to afford an average priced home in the town of Breckenridge. Well, I am not going to ask anybody if they're making $54 an hour in here. I'm a dentist full time, and I beat $54 an hour most of the time. But that's a lot of money to spend on a house. Most people say you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your gross income on housing. So it's just something to think about. We're running out of time. We're always behind the 8 ball relative to our affordable workforce housing. So it's taken 20 years to get where we're at now. It's 20 years of political will, and it's 20 years of finding revenue to build workforce housing, affordable workforce housing. And it all started with the Joint Upper Blue Master Plan, where we cut down our density because we didn't want the community to be so crowded and so congested. The first thing the town did legislatively is and I wasn't on town council then, is they bought a piece of property that was close to a main thoroughfare. It was close to a grocery store, but it was kind of on the wrong end of the tracks, so to speak. We don't have any tracks in Breckenridge. We bought this piece of property. Had lousy plantings on it, nothing like the trees you have around here. It was sloped, it wasn't an ideal site, but we bought it anyway. And in 1998, we opened our first rent-controlled, affordable housing, workforce housing rental complex. There's 74 units. The area median income is what AMI stands for. The Breckenridge area median income is about $58,000 now. Back then it was about $55,000. So this 73 units works for people that make about 83% of that income. So it works for people making $45,000 a year if you do the math, which is what a lot of people make. Carpenters make that. Some of my dental hygienists make that. You know, it was a niche that needed to be filled. And this place has been occupied at 95% occupancy for 20 years, 19 years. It has really served a great purpose. It's sitting on now a good road with bus service. It's a block and a half from our rec center, a block and a half from the main grocery store in our community, a block and a half from the county jail. So it's very centrally located. In 1996 and 98, it was on the edge of town, so to speak. But it's worked out very well. And it is a process, or it's a product of the town land banking and then giving the land to the developer, and then the developer created this project. They're called Quorum Development. Great group to work with. I don't know if they work as far afield as Alaska, but they work all over the state of Colorado. I was telling you about the Joint Upper Plough Master Plan. This is what I got wrong. It's actually 1997 is when we approved it. That reduced our density, which was very helpful. It also, like I said, was adopted by all the communities in the south end of our county. And it's been our kind of guiding principle moving forward. Out of that came the affordable housing strategy, and we decided to create an annexation policy. As I said, we were just 1,400 people back then. We're 43 or 4,400 now. There was a lot of undeveloped land, and we thought, well, we need to bring the hammer down on developers. Not that they're bad people, but we needed some leverage. So we built into our development code that 80% of dwelling units must be deed restricted if they want to be in the town of Breckenridge. Well, the town of Breckenridge has water, sewer, shopping, all sorts of amenities, the rec center that people like to hang out in. We've got the ski area, et cetera. So we deed restricted. What a deed restriction is a variety of tools that we use depending on the development, how desirable it is, et cetera. And in this case, we oftentimes go with a 3% appreciation cap on for sale properties. We oftentimes go with a capital improvements cap so that if you buy a deed restricted unit, you can't improve it more than 10 or 15% of the purchase price depending on the project. We throw in the permit fees, which could be $10,000. We throw in the water taps, which is another $10,000. We have chosen to look at a project and apply some of these incentives to the developer, the property, et cetera. Sometimes we put the land under it, sometimes we don't. And I'll show you some examples of that. We also allow greater density, which is, it's a unit per acre concept. And the typical density in Breckenridge is about 7-8 units per acre. Well, we allow up to 11 units per acre if you're building an affordable housing project. So much like the gal that was speaking earlier about rental living, density can be good if it's designed well, thought out well, if you're close to good transportation options, those kind of things. And so this is the Wellington neighborhood. This is what you were talking about, Kaylee. This is a for sale project brought to us by a private sector developer. This individual built homes like this in Boulder, Colorado. It was a big success. It's called the Poplar Project. And he came to us in 2000, 2001 and asked to be annexed because he wanted the water, he wanted the sewer, he wanted our rec center, the Performing Arts Center, a bunch of amenities in the town. And we said yes. And so he built this neighborhood, 80% of which needs to be deed restricted. The appreciation is capped at 3%. We put a bunch of restrictions on it. He liked them. 20% of the units were market units, so he could charge as much as the market would bear. 80% were deed restricted, and many of them were deed restricted at 80% area median income. Some were deed restricted at 100% of area median income. And so he built this wonderful neighborhood of about 100 units. Then he came back and wanted to do phase 2. Well, we were a little generous with one of our provisions, and we pulled it back to something a little different. He said, it's okay, I can live with that. This was all done it's still being done. He's now on his 3rd phase, doing something called the French Creek neighborhood, and it's a little more dense. It's in the town limits, and once again, 80% of what he's building is affordable at that 80% AMI level. So that's you got to be making $44,000, $45,000 a year. So this is, in the scheme of things in Breckenridge, kind of high end, but very nicely done. There's a few duplexes in here, but most of them are single family homes. He likes the neighborhood so much, our developer, he actually bought a market rate unit because it's so nice. And it is the kind of premier neighborhood to have children in the town of Breckenridge. Let's see. And in 2002, we did what's called our vision statement. We came up with these 10 things that we really thought were important to move forward. Community character, part of that is keeping your population in your community, as opposed to letting them do what's called the down valley effect. And that would be driving from here to, I don't know what, to, I guess, Anchorage. That's a long ways to drive. You lose your community personality when people have to drive that far to and from work. Right now, our community is made up about 47% of our community are the people that live and work in Breckenridge. And I think you guys were telling me that you're much higher than that. Aspen's like 18%, Vale's like 26%. Interestingly, Whistler does a great job. They're about 70% of their workforce lives in the Whistler area. We're stuck at 45, 47%, but it's still a far cry better than some of the other places in the state of Colorado. Economic viability and sustainability, they are things that we are very interested in preserving. We are interested in preserving our natural resources. Transportation's a big part of where we develop these affordable housing neighborhoods. We have a north-south alignment, and that's where our buses are, and that's where we prefer to see these housing developments go. We also like to mix the housing up with the whole kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's these neighborhoods are not just projects. They are neighborhoods where people like me, a dentist, can live, or a real estate agent can live, who have pretty good incomes, or somebody that has an 80% AMI income, which is about $45,000 a year. Teachers live here. Ski area employees live here. So you have what I call kind of the whole community is represented in these neighborhoods, in our housing neighborhoods. Transportation is nice because if you hook all these neighborhoods up, you only have to have a kind of a modest bus system, and all of our neighborhoods are connected by a small bus system called the Free Ride, which is free. Cultural resources, we put a lot of time and money into our cultural resources, summer concerts, theater, we have an arts district. Recreational resources, we've got the great outdoors, but we also have a great recreation center. Education, government, and institutions, we like the people that are running the town to live in the town, as opposed to living down valley. education, government institutions. We have Colorado Mountain College in our town limits. We have a couple of elementary schools. Our population is growing. We're at about 4,500 now, but it's growing slowly. It's not growing very fast, and some of it's because of annexations, and some of it's because of all of this affordable housing. The built environment, we have a historic downtown that you can't be more than 26 feet tall. You can't tear down buildings that were built in 1870. We have a huge historic district. It's the biggest historic district on the western slope of Colorado. So we're very much into preserving our built environment and repurposing buildings that are 50, 80, 100 years old. In 2006, Summit County, that's the county Breckenridge is in, had a Summit County ballot initiative which the town backed in a huge way. Summit County is made up of 4 big towns. Breckenridge is the biggest, and 4 big ski areas: Copper Mountain, Arapahoe Basin, Keystone, and Breckenridge ski area. We're all in this together, and we raised a impact fee sales tax, created the Summit Combined Housing Authority, and we've generated $7 million since 2006. We, from the Breckenridge government, add $1.5 million a year, and funds are used for land banking, buying pieces of property nobody else wants, or just go out buying it. We buy down $250,000, $220,000 condos, fix them up, and we sell them for about $175,000. So we take a hit on those, but we have a lot of restrictions placed on those. Project development, we help with project development by donating all the fees for plan reviews, fire department reviews, sewer taps, water taps, all sorts of stuff. That expired in 2016, but we had a vote in 2015, got ahead of the curve, and the voters unanimously reapproved this in perpetuity, this funding program. And in 2016, we added an additional funding program that's going to take our $7 million that we received in 10 years and probably triple it. But it's got a 10-year retirement on it. It goes from 2016 to 2026. So the community, Summit County and the town of Breckenridge, have been willing to tax themselves to raise pretty big numbers. This is the first development I showed you, Wellington neighborhood, was done by a private developer with incentives from the town. This was done as the town of Breckenridge's development. There were 42 townhomes here. It's built, just down the road from that first apartment complex I showed you. It's right next to the recreation center. It's deed restricted. You can't appreciate more than 3% per year on your real estate. It's all for sale. You can't short-term rent these units. You have to live there. They have to be owner-occupied. It's right behind an elementary school. It's been a huge success, and we built that in 2009 or 10, and it's right on a bus line. Another key component is put them on the valley floor. Don't put them out in the boondocks. We put them on the valley floor where there are buses, sidewalks, etc. This is a complex that the Breckenridge Ski Resort developed. They did it all by themselves. We helped them with some of the planning and cost and the building inspection fees, but they built 180 units. They did a great job, but they decided to only rent it during the season, the ski season. So we, as the town, we often are in little deals with the ski area, and we have gotten them to deed restrict many of these units to year-round rentals. You don't have to be a ski area employee. You get to be there for a whole year. You don't have to move after 6 months, etc. And the ski area likes that. If they want something that's a little special, we say, okay, we want 2 units out of Breck Terrace. And more often than not, they give it to us. There's 186 units, and I think we've had our way with them on maybe 40 of the units. So they still use this primarily for their workforce because they have a big workforce. This is a public-private low-income housing tax credit project that we built and finished about 1.5 years ago. It's called Pinewood Village 2. It's right next door to that very first one we built in 1998. The first one we built were a bunch of 1 and 2 bedrooms, a few 3-bedroom units. Nobody wanted them that big. It was single people, couples with no kids. So we built this just with studios and 1 bedrooms. And it filled up just like that. The rents are controlled. They're just like they are in Pinewood 1. They're controlled at about $650 to $900 a month, depending on location in the building, size of the unit, et cetera. They all have stacked washer and dryers. They all have full kitchens. It's been a terrific success. Before we even got our certificate of occupancy, we had 98% occupancy. People signed up for it. And what, somebody help me with that. What does that mean? Is it LIHTC? Okay. I keep wanting to call it LITC. A LIHTC project is a project that has tax credits. Well, as a town, we can't use them. So through a LIHTC financing scheme, you sell the tax credits. It brought our cost down from about $10 million to $6 million. So we saved 40 cents on the dollar to build these 46 units. So it worked out very well. It was a little big for some people, a little tall. It's 3.5 stories tall. But the neighbors, it's right across the street from the recreation center. It's next to the other Pinewood spot. It's a block, 2 blocks from the big grocery store, gas station, so it's in a very good location right on a bus line, and it filled up just like that. And we're running at probably 98% occupancy. People get 12-month leases on this. They aren't booted out, and it's all controlled. They know what they're getting into rent-wise. I forgot what the utilities cost on this. It's all done in a sustainable way. It was LEED certified at the lowest level, whatever that is, silver. And so the utility bills are quite low. So it's worked out very well. So this is Breckenridge. If you've never been there, at one time we were the number 7 small town that Americans love most. I don't know where we are now. This was 2-3 years ago. I still think people like Breckenridge. Our downtown core is a historic district. We have height restrictions, 26 feet, can't be higher than that. If you're a block or 2 away from downtown, you can start going up. If you're further away, you can be 5-6 stories tall. The downtown core is probably 90% developed. Many of the buildings are 130, 40 years old because we were started in 1859, but some aren't, and some are restored. I wanted to go over what's working, what the impacts are. Land banking's working. Our very first project was a whole bunch of land we went out and bought, and then boom, 2 years later we built 78 units on it. Forest Service trades we've taken advantage of. The Forest Service oftentimes has pieces of property that are in the midst of private property or municipal property. They don't like that. They want their Forest Service property to be up in the hills. So we have traded for and bought Forest Service property, and that LIHTC program building of 45 units was on a piece of Forest Service property that we traded for. We have our annexation policy, where if you want to come into the town of Breckenridge and take advantage of all of our amenities, you want to build something, 80% of it has to be affordable housing. They can define it. The town council accepts it. We had one project that I don't have a picture of that the guy came in and said, I can't do that. I can do about 40% of my project at 60% AMI, but I can't do 80% of the project at 80% AMI. And we thought, well, yeah, we need 60% AMI, so let's do it. So we're flexible, to a degree, but if you want to be annexed by the town of Breckenridge, you have to pay the piper. You have to contribute to workforce housing in some manner. We also have a cash in lieu program. If you don't want to, you have to pay X number of thousands of dollars. And to be honest with you, I can't remember the number, but it's significant. It's oftentimes the developers choose to build workforce housing. To be honest with you, I don't know what the income housing tax credits are all about. We do have public-private partnerships, the first one was the Pinewood 1 project. It's a quorum development. They're the private folks. We were the public. We put the land under it, put all the fees under it, and then they built the project. In 30 years, we get it back for $1. The LIHTC program was another public-private program. The Wellington neighborhood was just private. He bought the land, he built it, but we put a lot of, we got rid of a lot of fees. We got rid of sewer tap fees, water tap fees, and if you add all that up, it's about $40,000 per unit on the Wellington neighborhood. So we have a lot of arrows in our quiver. It's not just one thing. We've looked at a tiny home community, couldn't make it work because I stupidly walked around this piece of property and the owners saw me walking it around, and they took the price from $1.7 to $2.7 million, and it's where I wanted to see a tiny home community, and my council said, John, you've screwed the pooch, we aren't going to buy that. And they were right, and it's still for sale at their stupid $2.7 million figure, but so maybe the town will get it someday. The impacts that we're seeing is we have more families in Breckenridge than we've ever had before, and that has created a need for more childcare, which I'll get into in a minute. We have decreased community. We're saving 100,000 commuter miles a week on having 47% of our workers live in the town of Breckenridge. That's environmentally the right thing to do. It's the right thing for congestion on the highway. We rarely have traffic deaths on our highway anymore because not everybody's driving up and down our crazy highway. And that's not me coming up with that 100,000. I couldn't believe it when I first heard it, and I had it. It came from an independent housing group of consultants that estimated that we're saving 100,000 commuter miles per week. It's better for employee recruitment. I've talked to, what was it, Franz? Yeah, Franz. You know, he's having trouble keeping his employees here because he doesn't have any place to put them. I'm a dentist, I have 10 employees. It's not easy to keep them all in Breckenridge. It's not easy to pay them enough to stay in Breckenridge because it's so expensive. So it's good for business. Local spending. Our employees that live in our affordable housing spend $15 million a year, which those tax receipts come straight to the town of Breckenridge. So there is a financial payback and there's a social payback. I'd much rather buy dinner from a waitstaff person that's a neighbor, that's vested in the community, than somebody that has to drive 40 miles back home every night. It's more fun, to be honest with you. So, childcare, huge issue. All of a sudden we have families. You know, people get tired of having 5 roommates when they're 28 years old. So they have a couple of children. Childcare used to be on the backs of our 19, 20-year-olds that got paid $8 or $9 an hour. Well, the state of Colorado has now mandated to provide childcare, early childhood education. You have to have a teaching certificate. Well, that's a whole new ballgame. So we mandated a livable wage for daycare providers, $15 an hour, which for a lot of people is a joke, but it's better than nothing. Used to be 8 or 9. We mandated it because we paid off the mortgage of all 3 of our child care facilities in Breckenridge from the town of Breckenridge coffers, and we created a tuition assistance program so that if you know childcare, the true cost of childcare is about $65 a day per child. Well, if you do the math, you know, if the kid's in childcare for 5 days a week, that's $325 a week. You know, that's $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 a month per child. Well, most people can't spend that, and the Office of Economic Development tells you that you shouldn't spend more than 30% on housing, you shouldn't spend more than 13% on daycare. Well, we're up at 15, 18, 20% of people's compensation going to daycare. So we fill the gap. If you, because you've given us your tax returns, can only afford $38 a day, we pay the other $22 to get to that $60, or the true cost of daycare. That's how the daycare providers pay their teachers a living wage, is what we call it. So childcare to me is hand in glove with affordable workforce housing. You know, for your ski bums that are 21, 22 years old, they don't care about this stuff. For people my age, I hate to say it, we tried to get the town citizens to vote for additional funding for this program. Didn't pass. So now the town has consciously said, so what? We're still going to write the check, because we believe childcare is part and parcel to quality of life, housing, workforce housing, happy workers, etc. So that to me is and that's kind of one of my babies. So what's next? We've got this impact fee. We successfully raised it in the last election in November of 2016. We're involving employers. Employers are beginning to do what are called master leases with some of these bigger projects, where they'll say, look, I want 10 units for 12 months, so I have a place for my key employees, or any of my employees. The town of Breckenridge is even doing that. I think we rent 6 from ourselves, but we pay the going rate. We're trying to, it's not very successful, buy down inexpensive, kind of beat up condominiums. You know, the condominium, they want $250. It's not worth it's worth maybe $175. The market's so hot, we're buying it for $250, and we're turning around and selling it or renting it for $175, or renting it for about whatever the right number is. So we're taking a hit. We're subsidizing these buy-down projects. We've only done like 10 of these because the market's so hot. We're continuing to monitor and administer the deed restrictions. Everybody wants to scam the system. We had a Purdue University professor buy one of our Wellington neighborhood homes as affordable workforce housing. Well, A, he doesn't work in Breckenridge. B, he rents it short term and uses it as an income stream. And we caught him after about a year, and we made him sell it. And he was hopping mad, but our lawyer said, you're right, he's wrong. And so he left as a disgruntled former homeowner in Breckenridge. We have a thing called the Summit County, or Summit Combined Housing Authority, that is partially sponsored or partially funded by that 2006 impact fee and sales tax increase. They pre-qualify people. They have educational classes on how to save money for a deposit or down payment, how to budget, etc. So people that buy these places, we've had very few foreclosures, and we've had very few people default on their lease payments either. Challenges down the road, retiring employees staying. You know, Breckenridge is a great place, Girdwood's a great place, but I'm a burden on the system. If I sell my townhouse that I live in now for what it's worth, I'll have a boatload of money. And then if I say, well, I'm going to go get one of these deed restricted units, that screws the pooch. It just doesn't make sense. I'm taking advantage of what taxpayers have put into this system, and so people like me aren't going to be allowed to do that. There are retirees that qualify because they still work. They've worked in the community for more than 7 years, which you have to do. And so we're trying to avoid people of means from scamming the system and taking up some of this stock. The town's going to go through a redevelopment phase. Right now, we only have 1,800 units of development left. A new council may say, we got to open up the gates. We got to let more people in. Well, the quality of life people aren't going to like that. I don't know what will happen, but there's going to be pressures on future town councils in Breckenridge. We have limited resources. Yeah, the town puts in a couple $1 million a year. We get $4 or $5 million from the county. Each one of these projects cost about $10 million. Well, pretty soon you run out of money. So we can't build our way out of this problem. We're trying, but it's tough. The NIMBY situation, I'm sure you're going to have it here in Girdwood. There are people that believe, they call them those people. I don't want those people in my neighborhood. Well, those people are fabulous people. They contribute to the economy. They have children. We have a vibrant school system. There's nothing wrong with those people. But when I was mayor, I actually had critics, they were all my age, tell me they don't want those people in Breckenridge, Colorado. So you're going to run into that NIMBYism. Those people don't create any sort of problems for the rest of us that can afford our own homes. Competing priorities. We have a very robust open space program. We like to buy up open space so it can't be developed. We buy up wetlands. We protect wetlands. We do a lot of things with our money. We pile it back into the infrastructure. Well, the recreation center is going through a $17 million overhaul. It's 30 years old. Well, that $17 million could have been used on affordable housing, but the rec center needed it. So there are competing priorities that different councils will have to make different decisions. There's also market pressure. The only place these prices are going is up, and even at 3% per year with our cap, the prices will double in whatever, 15 years. I don't know the math, but so it's tough to stay ahead of the challenges of the cost of workforce housing. But I think it's worth it. I think it's made Breckenridge a better community. It's much more robust. People that serve you are vested in the community. They're not driving 1 hour each way to their home. Their children are in daycare, 2 blocks from where they work. So I think it's a better way to live. So I think that's about it. Yep. That's about all I have.